FM News Talk 97.1. On-demand audio.
Guys like us, we had it made. Those were the days.
I had to play this. This actually... Oh, I love that high note. This is actually going to be Chris Arps' theme song for today instead of Shaft. All right, you can bring it down. I want to get to that line.
That's the best part. Didn't he know welfare state?
Everybody pulled his weight. I bring that up because Chris, before we get into our conversation here, just got back from visiting the Herbert Hoover Presidential Museum, correct?
Well, that was earlier this year.
Was it? Okay.
I visited all the presidential museums in Texas.
Oh, okay. All right.
LBJ and George the First and George the Second.
There you go. Nice. How did the LBJ monument compare to the Bushes?
Well, I tell you, the George W. Bush's museum mainly focused on his presidency. You know, this is the sixth one that I visited. And what I've noticed, and all the other presidents were dead, so this may have something to do with it, but they went more exhaustively into their early life, their career before politics, and then they went into the White House and the post-White House. W's library was mainly his presidency. George H.W., they went all the way back. It was like he was gone. They talked about his parents, how they met, his father's in college. I don't know if a lot of people know that the Bush family has a big St. Louis connection here. George H.W. Bush's mother, Dorothy Bush, is from St. Louis.
Right.
And Stiefel Nicholas, I don't give ads, but they control that. So.
Sure. One of his cousins.
They talked about that, a lot of the St. Louis connection.
Well, so that's sort of a passion of yours. Is that a bucket list thing now that you've turned 50?
It is.
Happy birthday, by the way.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Big 5-0. Yeah, it is a bucket list item. It's very interesting going to see these men, what their lives were all about. You have a character of what you think they are, but going there and actually, learning more about them. I learned a whole lot about Herbert Hoover that I didn't know. All I knew was that this was the guy that was the president during Depression, and he got, the blame for it, but he did a whole lot of things. He was the first president to go on TV. He was in charge of, or he helped with standardization when it comes to like nuts and bolts and things like that. He was the first person to initiate that. And the president at the time after World War I put him in charge of helping to feed the people of Europe because they were starving. And he got a whole bunch of acclaim out of that. And that helped really propel his political career.
So I can blame Hoover for the fact that I can never find a bolt and a nut in my drawer that fits?
He's the one.
All right.
He's the one that initiated all that.
That's good. Never seems to work. Let's play cut number 29 here, if you don't mind, Liz, because I've kind of put it off so far, 48 minutes into my program, but at some point we've got to talk about the ape or the gorilla.
Today, the zoo's director, Thane Maynard, said tranquilizing the animal wasn't an option.
We did not take the shooting of Harambe lightly, but that child's life was in danger. And people who question that, or are Monday morning quarterbacks or second guessers, don't understand that you can't take a risk with a silverback.
Thank you. So my 2 cents on that whole thing is, you know what? I grew up in Cincinnati. I spent many years at the Cincinnati Zoo. This gorilla enclosure has been around there for 37 years, basically unchanged. Nobody's ever fallen into it before. So the overreaction that the child's mother should be charged is wrong. And what the zoo did was right, because human lives matter more than animal lives. I'm sorry. That's where I stand on it. Let the phone calls begin. I can't believe how PETA and some of these whacked out left-wing environmental groups have reacted over this thing.
I agree with you 1,000%. And the one thing that they're not taking into account, this was a silverback male. This is the alpha male. This is the one that's in charge, that controls the females and is the big dog. You don't know that the silverback could have taken that child as a intruder into his pen and could have attacked that child. PETA and all these environmental people, we look at them as friends. They're whack. They want to stop fishing because the fish feels pain from the hook and chickens and all that. But this instance where they're putting the life of a gorilla over 4-year-old little boy really shows it just how far they're out there.
Yeah, it's true. And the Fox News had a story on earlier about the fact that Cincinnati police are looking into whether or not to charge the mother in this case with, negligence, that the child crawled away from her. I think that's just carrying it too far. It's a shame that the gorilla had to die. The gorilla did nothing wrong. It was minding its own business, and the kid fell in. But once the kid fell in there, you saw him dragging him through the water. They didn't show you the worst part of that tape. All of that tape had to be edited because of the fact that in some cases he looked ready to pounce on the kid, and then he finally drug him around the corner. They have an emergency response team for a reason, and I'm sure they were no happier in having to shoot that animal than anybody else, but they had to save the baby.
Yeah, and what I said it on my Facebook. If I was a 4-year-old little boy and I fell into a gorilla pen like that, after the initial shock of my mother seeing that and I'm okay, I would have wished the gorilla would have gotten me, because my mother would have put on she would have put on a show right there for everybody. The spectators would have got two things to talk about at dinner tonight. This little boy being dragged around the gorilla pen, and when he got out of there, his mother beat him half to death. That's what they would have been talking about.
That's funny. So you have to wonder if this had gone the other way, people still would have been defending the gorilla. I mean, they couldn't take that chance. But what the media did was they ran down to Texas somewhere where this gorilla came from. He was raised in some sort of wildlife compound, and they found the guy. His last name was Stones, who actually raised him from the day he was born. Used to take him home at night because his mother was kind of neglecting him a little bit.
But he always had a little bit of a flair about him. He was not mean. He was a gentle little guy. He grew up to be a beautiful, beautiful animal, but he was never aggressive. He was never mean. He would tease the heck out of people.
Apparently he was quite a character when he was little, but nobody wants him to be dead. But even this guy agreed, the guy who raised him, that they had no choice, because at 400 pounds, he could have, even in playing with the kid, he could have cracked his skull open against that rock or something.
I got a news flash for church.
What's that?
Gorillas are wild animals.
News.
Yeah,
breaking news.
Yeah, they're wild animals, and they're unpredictable, and you don't know what they're going to do. I know that's a news flash to PETA people.
Looked it up on one of the Twitter page. Somebody had consolidated all of the Twitter comments from liberal Hollywood, with all these actors going on and talking about how they should have shot the mother, and all these awful things about the incident and the fact that they shouldn't have killed the ape. And I'm thinking to myself, you're defending this animal, and while nobody wanted to see it die, there are tens of thousands of children aborted every week in this country, and nobody's raising the red flag about that.
That's where I was exactly going. They don't say, it's cricket sounds when they talk when we hear about third trimester infanticide, which is what it is. They want to say abortion, but it's infanticide. It's cricket, but with this, they want to put the woman in jail. There's a petition I heard where 100,000 people have signed it to have this mother arrested and be charged.
I got a huge rant. I posted this on my Facebook page Friday or whatever the story came out, and this guy wrote me a small War and Peace comment on here. Dario was his name, about how awful it is. We should wake up and see that we're the most dangerous species on the planet. Well, when it comes to abortion, I would agree with that. All of this would have been avoided if that magnificent animal wouldn't have been placed there for profit and human entertainment. For God's sake, man, it's a zoological society. It was created to protect these endangered animals in a safe place because they're disappearing around the world. How can you look at it's not a for-profit organization.
Exactly.
That just drives me crazy.
And that's what and I watched something about that this morning on TV, and that's what we're saying, that there's only so many of these silverback gorilla in the wild, and that Harambe was being used in a a breeding program.
Right.
Yeah, he was valuable in that
Apparently
sense.
hadn't pulled that off yet, but they were hoping that he would. Before I let you get out of here, what do you think about this Bill Kristol comment? As a never Trumper, at least somebody who's headed that way, What do you think about this Bill Kristol effort to get a third-party candidate?
I think it's a waste of time. Like, I'm not, and I said I haven't totally closed the door on Donald Trump. I saw a quote this morning or over the weekend on Facebook where somebody said, every morning I wake up for a reason to vote for Donald Trump, and by the time I go to bed, he gives me a reason not to. So I'm kind of in that camp, but third party, it may be a protest vote, but the third party person is not going to win. It's just going to put Hillary in the White House.
Thank you. I'm just needling you a little bit. You know that, right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's all right, because we like you so much. All right. Chris Arps, ladies and gentlemen, hey, thanks for coming by.
Appreciate it.
Happy birthday again.
Thank you. The
awesome.
Big 5-0.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
It's wow. My favorite
He's
comment.
Speechless. We got to run. More of the Marc Cox Show still to come. Stick around.